are you ready for this one? Speaker Donald Trump? Well, Fox News anchor Sean Hannity claims some Republicans in the House are working to install the former president as the new leader in the lower chamber. Here's Hannity himself.
Sources telling me at this hour some House Republicans have been in contact with and have started an effort to draft former President Donald Trump to be the next speaker. And I have been told that President Trump might be open to helping the Republican Party, at least in the short term, if necessary, if it's needed.
Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who spearheaded the effort to remove Kevin McCarthy from the speakership, was put on the spot yesterday after Fox News' Laura Ingraham asked him whether Donald Trump supported McCarthy being booted. Here's what he said.
I support President Trump, eager to campaign with him. Probably our private conversations I'm going to keep to us, but I think I'm in pretty good stead with the former president. You'll see me on the campaign trail with him soon. And by the way, you know who you won't see on the campaign trail at a big rally? Kevin McCarthy. Because if Kevin McCarthy took the stage at a Trump rally, he would be booed off of it like Lindsey Graham.
Meanwhile, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is fully on board with Trump being voted in as Speaker, writing on Twitter last night, quote, "The only candidate for Speaker I am currently supporting is President Donald J. Trump. He received a record number of Republican votes of any Republican presidential candidate. We can make him Speaker and then elect him president. He will make America great again."
And here's Trump himself on whether or not he'd take the job. Let's watch.
See you later. Thank you. A lot of people have been calling me about Speaker. All I can say is we'll do whatever's best for the country and for the Republican Party. We have some great people. We have some great people.
Would you take the job?
A lot of people have asked me about it. I'm focused. You know, we're leading. I don't know you. I'm sure you don't read too much in the papers, but we're leading by like 50 points for president. You know, my focus is totally on that. If I can help them during the process, I would do it.
Look, Trump's a patriot. And
Boy,
he's going to do what he needs to do to help the American people.
I got to give it to the former president. He understands, Bree, how to be a showman. I got to get you, say whatever you want about Donald Trump, but this is why people like him. A lot of people are saying I'm ahead in the Republican for 50 points, and you know, hey, if I can do both of them, I'll gladly help the Republican. I love it. And you know what? I want to see where this goes. I really want to see where this goes because you have Marjorie Taylor out there now, and I wonder if other members are going to come out and say, I'm not willing to vote for anybody but Trump. Bree, this could shock all of us.
Look, Kevin McCarthy pointed out that 96% of the caucus was with him and was willing to stand against Matt Gaetz and continue to vote for him to be Speaker. But is that same caucus and those percentages going to be willing to stand up against Donald Trump if he emerges as a kind of consensus replacement for Kevin McCarthy? I mean, Matt Gaetz doesn't have the power to point and dictate the fate of people's elections and their races all across the country. So you can go across him. You can pick your donors over him. You can pick, consensus over him. You can pick the establishment over him. But can you really side? Can you afford to side against Donald Trump?
Absolutely not. I mean, Donald Trump is a larger-than-life figure in Republican politics right now. And I'm curious to see, MTG, probably Boebert. Byron Donalds is thinking about maybe throwing his hat in the ring, but he's a big Trump supporter. And so I would love to see where this goes for him. I'm curious to see what the Republican base dictates in this regard. Will more members of the Freedom Caucus, will they start to slowly become open to this idea as they hear from their constituents? I mean, if you end up getting 30, 40, 50 members saying they're going to vote for Trump, Bree, that has never happened in politics before. You can say a former president who's running for president becomes Speaker of the House of Representatives. Yeah,
look, I have some questions about whether or not Donald Trump can logistically manage it, given that he's already having trouble with managing all of his campaign obligations and all of the court appearances that he has to show up for the 4 indictments that he's facing up and down the East Coast. I have some questions about whether or not that's going to mess with the House schedule and whether they're going to be able to actually get anything done. And I think it's any person's guess whether or not Donald Trump being in that role helps him or hurts him. Is it an opportunity for him to kind of expose himself and say things that might get him into some unfavorable news cycles? Is this like participating in a debate, something he's declined to do because I think he understands when you're ahead, just stay there.
There's no need to. He's running
need
a
to rock
general
the ship.
election strategy already.
Right. So whether he would be advantaged by it and whether he really sincerely wants to do it versus just being the greatest showman here.
Yeah.
Move over, Hugh Jackman. There's a few greatest showmen.
Somebody else can. I mean, look, one thing that is advantageous for the former president is the idea that he's willing to help Republicans. And I think, Bree, as we look at the Republican contest right now, Republican voters, with the exception of the small percent of never Trumpers, are warming up to the idea that Trump is going to be the nominee. They do not want Joe Biden, and they darn surely don't want Kamala Harris. And so I think Trump is easing his way to a pretty healthy win in terms of winning the nomination again. And if the polls are to be believed, a growing percent of Americans are open to the idea of the former president returning back to the White House.
Yeah, I got to say, again, caveated, substantively, I obviously don't agree with what any of these people are doing for the most part outside of some of the anti-war stuff. But it feels undeniable that there is energy, excitement, diversity of political opinion on the right.
That's true.
And it is
That's
really,
true.
I got to say, it's galling to me to see so many liberal pundits and media figures bragging about the absence of that on the left.
Like who? Like, give me an
Although
example.
so it's a good thing. So, for example, I saw a tweet last night from Jonathan Capehart, who I think is
MSNBC
used
anchor.
to be conservative, kind of rhino.
Was he ever?
He's like a
didn't know that.
nonpartisan kind of person, but seems very liberal or neoliberal to me. He tweeted last night a picture, like a girl boss cool picture of Nancy Pelosi in a red coat putting her sunglasses on, and tweeted out, reminder, Nancy Pelosi also had a 4-seat majority during her second stint as Speaker of the House, so ... Ostensibly saying, look how great Democrats are, that they didn't challenge a historically unpopular speaker. Now remember this, when those of us
By the way,
left,
McCarthy is actually popular with most Republican voters.
That's
a lot of polls came out yesterday about that.
That's an important point to make.
Yeah.
Unlike Pelosi, so those of us who were advocating for forced the vote back in 2020, 2021, one of the things that I pointed out in an article that I wrote at the time was a majority of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, did not want Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, did not approve of the job that she was doing as Speaker. So when we were having this conversation about whether it was wise for the squad members to challenge Nancy Pelosi in that way, some people were arguing, well, no, they're going to get dogged by the media, they're going to have a hard time about it. And people are going to stand with Pelosi. And I said, of course, the corporate media is going to come after you, just like the corporate media is coming after Gates. But that's not what's dispositive. The question is whether, and I'm sorry, establishment Republicans are coming after Gates.
But also a lot of conservatives are coming at him, not because they disagree, but because they're worried about the impact on maintaining the majority. Newt Gingrich is one.
Establishment conservatives.
Well, hold on. Mark Levin is not an establishment conservative at all, Bree.
Sure, let me just finish this point.
Okay, go ahead.
The point is that you have to worry about people who you need to vote for you and whose respect you actually value because they agree with your fundamental principles disagreeing with you. The fact that a certain kind of person is coming for you, what did FDR say? I welcome their hatred. Identifying that pushback from a certain kind of enemy proves your fundamental point. And on top of all of that, the squad members had the advantage of going up against someone who was historically unpopular.
I will say, Bree, I've asked you about this before a while ago. I mean, Nancy Pelosi decimated them. I mean,
she got them in line.
Their influence has seemingly waned. I remember once upon a time, and Bree, you know more about this than myself. I remember once upon a time they had a PAC that was challenging members who weren't as progressive in districts where the polling indicated those members were voting in ways that weren't in favor with the people they represented. I don't know what happened to that particular PAC. That I think AOC or some folk close to her were sort of running that operation. That appears to be gone now, and they're voting in lockstep with most of the regular Democrats who they once upon a time criticized, including Bernie Sanders, by the way.
100%. And we, if you haven't seen this segment already, we recorded an interview today with Cornel West, straight from the Hart Congressional Building, where Code Pink, an anti-war group that was founded, I believe, in the wake of the Iraq War, was protesting Bernie Sanders supporting seemingly endless aid to Ukraine as well. And let's not forget, to your point about how much the squad has changed. Not only did AOC previously say that she wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi without concessions. Like, why would I vote for Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, I remember
Not only
that.
did she previously say that in a normal country, she and Joe Biden wouldn't be in the same party. Ilhan Omar tweeted, thank God for screen grabs, tweeted on December 24th, 2020, at the peak of the force the vote movement on the left, where we wanted them to do exactly this. She agreed. She said, yes, we can. With a slim majority in the next Congress, anything can be possible. It will literally take 5 courageous progressive members to get concessions on progressive policies. I guess we didn't have 5 progressive members of Congress.
Yeah, I guess they didn't. I mean, you know, politicians are primarily and principally concerned with maintaining power. And they are very reluctant to see that power dispersed in a way that sort of don't meet a grander theme or objectives. And we've seen this in politics for a very long time. And so in that regard, to your points about Congressman Gates, this is a fascinating argument that we're having on the ideological right now. And I think we're going to work this out. We just need to work it out before midterms, or before the presidential of next year. We have an opportunity to win back the Senate. There are far more Democrats up for re-election than Republicans. And I would even argue we have an opportunity to win back the White House. We need to focus on the bread and butter issues that everyday Americans care about. We need to focus on the economy. I think it's right to talk about this Ukrainian conflict and how long are we supposed to continue to fund this before we start focusing on our own people. We have to focus on the fact that by next year, we may have over 1 million people that have come into this country illegally, because Joe Biden says to argue against it means you're somehow a racist, which is absurd to me. I mean, Bree, I don't know if you saw the footage of black residents in Chicago saying we have been struggling for years and you guys haven't given a hoot at all, but you're giving out thousands of dollars a month to people who aren't even American. Thank you, Democratic Party.
I am a progressive populist, and I think acting like the enemy is between poor people who are fleeing their country because U.S. policies largely have created a toxic environment of violence and poverty is not the issue. If you want people to stay in their country, stop messing up their country.
But we shouldn't just let them come in, though, Bree.
We have an amnesty policy in the United States of America that is the law. If you want to change the laws, wait a minute. If you want to change the laws of the United States of America, then you can try to do that legislatively. But randomly trying to make the enemy of some poor family who had to push their baby under barbed wire because that's how horrible what they were trying to escape was. I'm not ever going to sit here and act like the enemy is that individual on a micro level.
Can I ask you a question?
Nor am I going to pretend like if those immigrants were in America, the Democratic Party had any interest in helping those poor people in Chicago, because those poor people in Chicago have been here for 400 years.
No, that's true.
And
that's true.
They've never given a crap about it. But I do want to stick. We can have an immigration segment if we want to do an immigration segment. But I do want to make sure that we just close out this topic at hand. Is that what you want to get back to?
No, because I want to make my point.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
I want to make my point, and then we can move on. If someone comes into your home uninvited, would you just let them stay? You would not. And when most people...
Wait a minute.
When most people...
First of all, I don't know what your tradition is, but I know a lot of religious and Christian traditions have a lot of things to say about the hospitality we're supposed to extend to people who have less than what we have.
Not
and
random people just coming into your home, Bree, and they are random people coming into the country, and we don't know where they're from.
If you went into your neighbor's home, lit a fire and burned it down, and then they came over and said, can I stay here for the night? Would you let them in? Because that's the analogy.
No, I would not let them in.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to close up with this one last point.
Go ahead. I want you to make that point.
On the Kevin McCarthy stuff. Glenn Greenwald made a really good point on Twitter. He said that there were Democrats who argued that they would be willing to cross the line and save Kevin McCarthy in exchange for concessions. Yes, perfect. This is what they should be doing. This is a rehabilitative moment for the squad potentially to say, okay, we're going to break with our party if you give us something, if you concede to some progressive ideals. I would love to see it be something like, I agree with you on funding to Ukraine. Let's make an agreement to ratchet back that funding and spend it on some domestic priorities that Republicans might not otherwise want to spend it on. However, the one thing that I think this was from the Daily Caller was reporting on this in the screen grab from Glenn Greenwald. The one thing that they wanted to negotiate to say that we would cross and save you over is if they agreed to more funding for Ukraine.
Yeah, because that's
not
what
a child
Democrats
tax
want.
credit.
That's what Democrats want.
Not anti-poverty programs, not anti-homeless programs.
And I'm not saying progressives. I'm being
not
clear.
Medicare for all.
That's what
but
Democrats
even these progressives, nobody was willing to negotiate for progressive working class interests. Only for more money for Ukraine.
Democrats, in my opinion, in the House, they don't care about what the American people want. They're not interested in what the American people want. And in that regard, Matthew Gaetz is right. The polling indicates American people don't understand why we're in this conflict. And the argument has been, well, if we don't stop Vladimir Putin, he's going to go into Poland and all these other places, and maybe he will. I have no clue. But it's hard, Bree, for people to say, let's come to the aid and defense of another when they're struggling right here at home. How in the world was McCarthy going to make that concession to say send even more money to Ukraine when we sent over $100 billion? Yeah,
well, that's why Matt
He would have been voted out anyway.
That's why Matt Gaetz stood up. And that's the Republicans, if they want to vilify Matt Gaetz and make an enemy of him, they're going to have to figure out how to create a wedge between him and the American people
Well, you can
when they agree on
vilify
this particular
Gaetz
issue.
and still say we're not sending more money to Ukraine. They can do both of those things.
All right, well, stick around. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.